Hi, LJ. Oh, it is recording. Marvelous. Great, LJ.
Yes. I'm not available. Okay, one day.
LJ.
One day.
Hi, Jenny Mead. Hi, Lily. They're all coming. Me. They're all going to. That's an our idea, Sarah K. Okay. We're just getting connecting. So, hi, Brittany.
Hello.
We're gonna do gallery. Ooh, Jenny Mead. Sarah K. LJ. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How's married life?
Going pretty good. Going
Yeah,
good.
good. That's a good thing. Okay, I'm trying to see.
Do I? No, I think they're mentioned. But I want to stay on. I don't have space.
No, because I'll break it and then we'll be.
We can all laugh.
We got a massive, awesome panel tonight. Can I tell you
No,
how fabulous
yeah.
these people are?
That one's already off. So then
Whoa.
down.
Yeah, technology is not my friend, but just Emma.
That's good. That's
I like that.
That's good.
No,
take that off. Which one is? That one.
I see on this light bulb.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Right, okay.
I just kind of want to like be able to, I don't know, like get some of the people. We won't get the yeah.
Still Rambo. Or somebody questioning.
Oh, look at my hair.
You turn it all the way around? Like a three.
No, but how about we do some of the questions here and then we'll move it so you guys can see.
We're in a public university, just quit, we don't have money. Like, you know. Okay, that's a little weird, but we're gonna turn the camera as we go. So we have like 17 people in the class, I mean, not just as panelists. But, oh, good, you can't see me. All right. Okay, I do have some other people coming, but I'll just kind of let them come in as they come in. And we'll get started if that's okay. Okay. I'm gonna sit back. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so super important, you guys speak up loud because we're on Zoom. Can one of you say something so that I make sure our volume is good?
Hello, hello, can you hear me? Test 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Okay,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you all for coming. This class is the K12 Educational Interpreting 2 class. So these are seniors. Most of them will be graduating in May, June. We have a couple part-timers, so they might still have a few classes to go before they graduate. But I think we'll just jump right in. if you could, number one, panelists, go around and tell us, let me get this. Tell us your name, the grade level you interpret, and if you went to an ITP and what year you graduated. You don't have to name the ITP if you don't want to, but you can, totally up to you. I'll start with Brittany because she's on the first part of my screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Grayfig. I work in the 5th grade right now, and I have done other grade levels from kindergarten through 8th grade. And I graduated from UW-Milwaukee ITP in 2010.
And then can you also say the state that you work in?
Wisconsin.
Thank you. Let me go to Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Mead. I currently work in 7th grade. Last year I worked in kindergarten. I graduated from the UWM ITP in 2022.
Sarah Kay, you're next on my.
Hello, I am Sarah Kay. I currently own an agency, so I do sub for K12 now. In the past, I also worked for an agency doing long-term subbing for K12, and I did work for a district where I did 3rd, 4th, 5th grade through the district. So I have both flips of agency and district in Wisconsin. I graduated UWM's ITP in 2019.
Then we have LJ.
Hello, I'm LJ. Currently in high school, but the 2 years before this, worked for 2nd grade and then the 3rd grade in Wisconsin. And I graduated from UW-Milwaukee ITP in 21.
Lily?
Hi, I'm Laylee McLaughlin. I graduated ITP in, I don't know, 2010? That was a while ago. Sorry, I don't remember. But I'm from out of state, so Southern Illinois. I went to a college there. And then what was the other half of the question?
And you work in the state of Wisconsin?
I work in Milwaukee. Also really quick, Grace Meldebrant and John Tom have both independently texted me and said that they're waiting to be let in and to ask if you could check if they're floating somewhere in the ether.
I will. Okay, let me go to Shelby.
Hello, I am Shelby Emmerich, and I currently work in 6th grade. I graduated from MATC ITP in the year 2000. And currently I'm going back to William Woods, so that will be my 2nd graduation from ITP in about 2 years. So I've worked everything from K3 all the way to 12th grade, done it all.
Then we have Jay. He's coming on. There's Jay. Hi, Jay.
Hello.
We are just introducing ourselves. So your name, the grade level you interpret for, if you went to an ITP, and then the state you work in.
Okay, I'll try my best. Is it my turn?
Yes, and we're just voicing. There's no deaf in the panel or anything. So
Okay, sounds good. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Jay Rowett, and I work in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm currently at a middle school, and I work with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade throughout the day. Last year, I was actually between 2 buildings. So I worked at a high school in the mornings, and then in the afternoons, I went to an elementary school down the street. So currently, within the past 2 years, I've had the whole range of all the different grades. And let's see, am I forgetting anything, Leah?
no, I think you got them all. Thank you.
That sounds great. And I'm
Lily,
really
can you
excited
let
to
them
be here
know
with
that
you
I
all.
sent the link to them, to John and Grace? I resent the link to their email. Thanks. Okay, So we just have some questions. I had them come up with 2 or 3 questions to ask the panel. What we have learned is, I kind of changed some of the curriculum this year because I'm teaching this for the first time. But I thought it was super, super important that they learn about teacher discourse and classroom discourse and how that dynamic influences how we interpret for our students. So we've done a lot with elementary, middle, and high school. We've got to analyze some of the teachers' lessons and talking about the questions teachers ask, the responses that students give, and then some type of feedback that the teacher gives to those students. And then, you know, different places that we stand in the classroom, those kinds of things. So that's kind of where we're at. We're going to be getting into IEPs, looking at IEPs and how we become part of the team as a whole. Some of the struggles of getting IEPs and access to IEPs being an interpreter. So those might be some questions that come up. We have John, Tom, and Grace who joined us. Hello. Can you just tell us your name, what grade level you work, the ITP, if you graduated in ITP, and the state you work in? Go ahead, John. You're on my thing first.
Hi, I'm John Tom. I'm a sign language interpreter. I work for PI, but I do K12 in pretty much every grade K through 12. So everywhere there I gotta go. And I
Great.
graduated from UW Milwaukee back in 2011.
Grace. No. She's muted. Are you muted? I think you're muted. You don't see mute. Is it down on your left? How about now? I asked to unmute you. You can also do it. Now?
She is unmuted, but.
Oh, we love technology. Maybe go out and come back in, Grace. There we go. Okay, we'll get started. So I have these nifty, this class loves to talk. Yay, right? And so I have to do my little teacher discourse thing here where I have to pick names so that nobody talks over each other because we have a little bit of retrain here. So we're gonna go with questions. Are you guys ready? If you have a specific question for a specific person based on like their introduction, what grade level, you can go ahead. If it's just for the panel, that's fine. We'll kind of let them figure out who wants to answer it. Tori, you are first.
As a K12 interpreter, what would you say is your greatest struggle?
Let's go with Jay. Jay's really thinking. He must get a good answer.
Well, I hate, oh, is Grace back?
Yep.
Yes, can you hear me? All right, I had to allow it to use my microphone.
Oh, good.
Yes,
Quick,
okay,
quick introduction, and then we'll go to Jay to answer that question.
wonderful. My name is Grace Mildebrandt. I work for Professional Interpreting Enterprise right now. I graduated in 2019 with the ITP at UW Milwaukee. What else was there?
You worked in Wisconsin.
Work in Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I have worked in pretty much every grade level between like 3K up to high school, but primarily working in middle schools lately.
Great. Okay, the question we had, Tori, can you repeat the question?
As a K12 interpreter, what would you say is your greatest struggle?
And Jay was going to answer that.
That is a grand question there. Let's see. I suppose my greatest struggle can socially, depending on what school you're working at, is socially getting along with the whole system and dynamics that come along with, I'm just going to say presently a middle school that I'm working at. So to clarify that more, what I mean is when it comes to interpreting, you learn what you need for each class. You get along with the deaf kids just great. I mean, all the ones that I work with throughout the day, so lovely, so nice. I'm so excited to go to work every day. But my biggest struggle, I would say, is dynamics of the school, meaning the time. It is very restricted at schools. You're very minute to minute. So having the time to go to the teachers and get the materials I need ahead of time, that can be a struggle because there's events going on. Sometimes, the teacher could be absent and all these little things can pop up during the day that you find yourself not having enough time. And so, and it can be hectic sometimes, but I've also worked at schools where it's very quiet and you have plenty of time going throughout the day and getting the things that you need. So again, it really does depend on the school that you work in. And I have all the faith and trust that all of you are going to be able to blend in with wherever you end up working. And so your struggles just may be time working at a school. I've felt it's very limited time working at a school.
Anyone else want to add from the panel? We'll go with Laylee and then Grace.
I think my biggest challenge day to day, I think I actually forgot to mention that I'm in early childhood, so I'm in first grade this year. I think my biggest challenge regularly with the job is encountering severe language deprivation with the young students that come in. And so my role is very different than when I'm ever been with older kids or what have you, because I'm not like sitting and interpreting, I'm language modeling so much more. So the demand is very high, the relationship building is very high. And then the expectations for my role are just kind of all over the place. And that's, I feel like, a lot of emotional labor that I'm putting into the work as well because of that. And I think that just, it can be very draining to just know that like after they go home, you're like, well, no one's going to talk to you. So that's maybe the hardest part of my job.
Grace.
I think the hardest part of my job is being faced with inequity every single day. Because I work for an agency, so I sub for multiple different schools throughout the day, or not throughout the day, but like day to day. So I see schools that are like in poverty, like all the students are struggling, they're language deprived. And then I go to another school the next day and the same age kids are like learning how to code robots, like we have one school that struggles feeding all of their children and we have another school that has robots for all the kids to program. So that's my biggest struggle is just being prepared for what I'm going to see every day and just flip-flopping through or just navigating the school system, knowing that there are major inequities within the school system, just from neighborhood to neighborhood.
Shelby, what do you think your biggest struggle is?
This one's a tough one. I think what comes to mind most is being placed with a student that really doesn't need my services. Our district tends to, as a whole, not really in place upon that value of an interpreter on the students. I know that's not really my place to gauge where they're at, but currently I work with a student that I'm not really sure how I'm benefiting. So reaching out for that support from the teacher of the deaf and the case manager, how can I better this situation, and falling short with that support to the point that maybe they're going to pull the services from the student. Just feeling that out, like how can I know I'm here for a purpose, but how am I serving the student, and how can I do this in the best way possible?
Our next question comes from Tanner.
So I know some of you mentioned whether you're agency or staff interpreters, but if any of you could talk on some pros or cons of the one that you're involved in, according to K12.
So a little bit of history with that, panelists. We've talked a lot about the different roles that agency interpreters play versus staff interpreters hired by a district. And that there's other duties when you're hired by a district that interpreters may or may not serve versus what an agency interpreter would do going in and subbing, whether it be a day, 2 or 3 classes, 3 months, whatever. It's just a different look. So that's kind of where that history of that question comes. Grace.
I can talk about the pros and cons of working in an agency. So one of my favorite parts of working in an agency is I get to mix up my week a little bit. I don't have to go to the same school every single day. I don't have to work with the same students every single day. And I really value that variety in my week. I think I would get quite bored going to the same place every day, or just drained or something. I would feel a little, I think I would, what's an English word for like stabilize? I wouldn't, I don't know. But I like the variety.
You plateau.
Stagnant.
Yeah.
Stagnant. There we go.
Yeah, those words. I think I feel like I would fall into that. I don't know for sure. I've never been full-time at a school before, but I feel like that's something that I would do. So I do enjoy working with a variety of different people in my day. So that's a definite pro for me working for an agency. A con is I don't get to know the staff very well or get to know the students as much as a staff interpreter would. I kind of go in and I'm like, hi, my name is Miss Grace. We're moving on. This is what I have to do. And I go in, I interpret, I leave. I do right now this year work 4 days a week in a school district that I've been in and out of for the last 3 years. So this year is a little bit different because I do know my students very well. And I am being able to get to know my, the staff very well as well, 4 days a week at this one school. And that's been quite fun getting to know everyone and getting to know the students' names. So I would say that's another pro is I get to choose if I want to be at one school district or if I get to mix up my week.
Great. Laylee.
So I'm a staff interpreter, and I would say the pros to this is the opposite of what Grace said. I get to be with the same students year after year. Not that I'm working with the same students, but I see them growing. I get to be there all the time, especially because I'm in a K-8 setting. So it's, I get to watch them from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade, which I've said goodbye to many students, already in my career, which has been just really satisfying and proud. Also, some other really positive things for me is that I have a very strong union from where I work. And so I get to have an active part in how my job is, and I can work actively to make my job better with my colleagues. And so that's a really nice part of it, that I can kind of feel a part of a collective, as well as just being able to be a staff at the school and having children who aren't deaf or hard of hearing knowing me or having a relationship with me, or even connecting with parents on a more personal level and things like that. It's where I get to be. It's also, I don't really have a lot of surprises. I have a very normal schedule where I just go every day and have expectations that this day is going to look probably like this, and then I can kind of prepare myself for it and then be done. So I really enjoy being a staff interpreter.
Sarah Kay and then Brittany.
So I have a very unique perspective having done both. I will say a pro from my first job when I did it for the agency that I didn't own, that was right out of college. I got put into a long-term sub position. Normally, I would say working for the agency is a pro, but in that circumstance, it was very much a con because the district I was put in was a hub school. So they had other interpreters there, and those interpreters like Laylee said, had a union and they were working together to get better wages, but they knew as an agency interpreter, I was making more. I didn't have to do duties. I got Wi-Fi and they didn't. And this, that, and the other. And I have all these perks of being an agency. So I was hated. I was hated the minute I walked in that door. It was very hard to make connections with the other staff for that reason. And it was not a very good experience at that school. But then on the flip, I went to the school that I went through the agency to the school I ended up working through directly as well. And at that school, being an agency interpreter, I got the perks of, you're not doing duties. Because honestly, duties can be scary. Like, especially for someone like me, they wanted me to go do like 5th grade recess when I'm working in 3rd grade. I don't know any of the 5th graders. And now I'm supposed to figure out the duty and bus duty. I don't know who belongs on what bus. Like, I'm not equipped for these things. And whereas a staff interpreter is very much, they're given that information and it makes sense for them to be doing these things. Whereas for me, it was like, I don't know you from Joe Schmo, but sure, get on bus 3, have a good day. Like, hope you get home. But then when I worked, and that was the thing is, as an agency interpreter, I was given Wi-Fi, but then when I became a staff interpreter, I actually had to fight for Wi-Fi, which to me was crazy because I was like, dude, I had the Wi-Fi literally like 6 months ago. Like, now that I work for you, this is all of a sudden a problem. And they were like, yes, it is. And I was like, that's actually insane. So it's just like, once you work for the district, I found that there's a lot more red tape and struggle that's just super unnecessary, that when you work for the agency, they kind of just roll out the red carpet for you and give you these things and don't question it. So I guess that's the big con of going from agency to direct, is it's a lot of unnecessary fighting for stupid things that you think are just going to be reasonable. Like, I had prep time when I worked for the agency, but it was taken away when I came on for the district, because now all of a sudden the prep time's not needed. Like, no, it's the same justification. The prep time is still needed, but you fight more battles, honestly, I feel, when you come direct with the school district than if you work for an agency.
Brittany.
I would say the positives of being a staff interpreter are just building the relationships with students, with staff, knowing who you're working with. I enjoy going to the same place every day, but I feel that I still have a variety because I may have to go cover for another interpreter in a different class or work with other students. So I have always liked that. And also learning about the district, learning about the politics of it, learning, building rapport and relationships with administration and how to do that and what that looks like. On the flip side, now I just lost my train of thought. A drawback, I guess, I remember, is, yeah, your overlapping roles. As a staff interpreter, you have overlapping roles and you're expected, it's not like Sarah and Grace were saying, it's not this or it's not yes or no. It's, well, yeah, we could give this to you as, duties as assigned. So.
John.
So I have been working since probably like 2011. So I have done both where I've been at the same school for, I think it was probably like 2 years, maybe 3. And in that time I was working with different grades, but I was also working with deaf staff members as well too. So that gave me a little bit more stuff to work on. So as Laylee said, you get to see the same people over and over again, or you get to watch them grow up. So that's another thing. If you're around long enough and you're staying in the area, you'll likely be able to do that. So I think for however long that I have been working, it's been nice to be able to make relationships with people that I do see maybe every week or every other week or a couple times a month, which is nice. Going off what Laylee said, with having the union there to work with everything, my wife also works K12, so I see the benefits of that. And Brittany probably won't toot her own horn, but she did a lot of work to get MPS pay raises back in the day, when they were paying not enough. So I think one of the fun things I did that I mentioned before, though, is I get to work with deaf staff members. So that's also kind of fun you do get voicing with K-12 work, but this is just kind of on a different level because now I'm voicing for a lesson that's being taught or voicing for disciplinary stuff, which normally, the interpreter is not responsible. Well, this is the teacher doing it, not me. So that's, a whole nother part that you have to kind of figure out too, is the different staff styles as well.
Next question is from Missy.
Hi. Okay, let me look at that. Okay, so having varying teachers and teaching styles, would you say that along with the factor of the child's language needs, do you find you change how you interpret based on their teaching style? And if yes, like how so? Do you change to match it? Do you just stick to what you're doing? Like, yes.
Jenny.
Okay, so I actually there's two students that I work with, and one has, grew up in a deaf family, has a lot of use of ASL, and the other is just starting to use an interpreter and use ASL. So as far as their different language needs, they are completely different. So say for one class, I might be fluently, interpreting the lecture, whereas the other one, I find I slow down, I summarize more, and I have more like expressive sort of like dramatic, I would say, like facial expressions to try and carry that meaning without that student necessarily knowing a ton of sign language. So that's one way that I kind of switch in between students specifically. As far as teachers go, one great example is a choir teacher that is working in the building is extremely bubbly and just the most energetic person on the planet, which is a first hour class. So that can be hard for me to, like immediately jump into that. But I find that automatically I do just kind of take in whatever energy that the presenter, speaker, whoever is talking. I automatically just capture that energy and give it back. Depending on the teacher and the student, I have had cases where one teacher had a lot of filler words and would always say like, okay, friends, let's go friends. Mind you, this was a high school class, so not exactly necessary for that situation. And the student specifically asked me, to omit that, like, if she says like, okay, friends, how are we doing? Just switching it to like, okay, how are we doing? I kind of leave it up to the students as well to like kind of tell me like whether or not they want to tone it down. I've been told that, depending on the teacher, they just don't want the extra information. They just want, a summary of it or whatnot. But that's just kind of how I change up throughout the day and different students.
LG, I'm curious about your student, or two students that you worked with. I think it was one.
Yeah, it was one student, and to go off of what Jenny said, like we had, like the examples that come to my head are we had a teacher for story time, and the teacher was, animated. So I'm like, okay, like let's, get to animated interpreting, just the whole thing. And then the next class I believe was PE, and that teacher was very like monotone, sarcastic. And this is third grade, so like a lot of the sarcasm is just, so how do you take into account what to give, what to omit, and then like the animated story time, like you got to think about interpreting and like what is going to draw the student in and actually have them pay attention. If they're not paying attention, then you got a whole other world of things to think about. So yeah, I think that answers your question.
Sarah K.
I think that question also goes hand in hand with like what grade level you want to work with. So like I know that I can't be on and like that personable and bubbly, like I'm personal and bubbly, obviously, but I can't be a kindergarten teacher for 8 hours. I can't be, oh my God, you found a leak every 20 minutes. Like I can't do that. I know that about myself. So my ideal range is usually that late elementary to middle school that I try to stick with, because I also I still like the youthfulness of that versus like high school. I feel like they're just kind of like meaner to you and like they don't really care, and that's not my money range. But I also found in my last assignment, and Grace can testify to this, my student was the equivalent of Wednesday Addams. Like, yeah, she was something else. So she hated it if I was any kind of like, oh, it's story time, like, oh, or when music came on and I would like have fun with it or anything like that, she absolutely loathed, like would hate me for it. So I found very much like it didn't matter to match the teacher's style. If that teacher was going off having a wackadoodle day, it didn't matter. I stayed in my stool and just made it very this, because otherwise my student yelled at me. So I also think it's when you get to those ages of like, they get a little angsty, like you kind of just match the student instead of the teacher too.
Bailey.
Yeah, it's this might be, I don't know, I don't know what word to use, but we have a couple of teachers at our school that are a little rambly and like, I don't know, these kids get fatigued. Like this is tiring. So like, am I gonna be like, and here's the topic and then, oh, blah, 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 my car, this, blah, 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 here we are back to math, like, no, I don't know, maybe it's unfair of me to like make the decision for the student to be like, I'm not interpreting that. Like, I'll just wait until like the information gets put out totally, and then oftentimes like condense it, especially in like early grade levels. But I was gonna say, like, being bubbly, man, I go over the top. Like with the little kids, I am so big and so loud most of the time, even if it doesn't match, like, because they don't know, like, they're learning how to look at you. So even if the teacher's being like deadpan, I'm like, that, totally big almost all the time. It's exhausting.
Grace, do you want to add something? Then we'll go to the next question.
Yeah, I was going to say, it definitely depends on the teacher that you're with, because I've had teachers that are rambly as well, and just like, we'll just word salad everything. Like, we'll start a sentence and then go into a different sentence and then a different sentence, and none of them really string together. And at those points, you just have to like take a second and be like, we'll wait. And other times, I have a teacher right now at the end of the day that's very like big and bubbly, and I do notice that my signing space gets a lot bigger, and I have more facial expressions, and the humor gets to come out a lot more. And I'm also walking around the room with that teacher a lot more, just because she has so much space that she uses, that I'm also walking around the room with her and just being big as well. Whereas other teachers who like to stay in their own spot, I also find a spot and I just kind of do my thing. And I think, what else was I going to add? And like young elementary, I like Laylee said, you're always going to be a little bit animated for that, no matter what the teacher is going to be like, because that student's generally learning ASL, and you just have to model as best you can, keeping their attention as best you can. Even if the teacher's monotone, you kind of adjust that for the better of the student's education.
Welcome, Julie. She just joined us. She came from another appointment. So Julie Najira, she'll probably be on here. There she is. Hi. So she's listening in. She'll answer as the questions come. Thanks for joining, Julie. And Julie works in Wisconsin, graduated 2022 last year, works for Pi as a staff interpreter, but is currently doing K12. Correct? Okay. And you are at high school, correct? Okay. There's the, whoop, there we go.
Hey, you're good.
Paige. Next question is from Paige. There she is.
Okay. So I feel like a lot of like little baby ITP, like they just graduated. I feel like a lot of times people will say like, recent graduates will like go into K12, like, cause that's like maybe like safe. But what do you like recommend or like are good tips for those students who are going to be going into K12 settings, either that are new or recently graduated ITP students, or are going to be going into K12 no matter what, either tips or advice to make those connections in K-12 with the setting, with the teachers and the staff, or either just like different approaches and things like that to just get better accommodated in that setting to be the best support for that student.
So I'll go with LJ, and then I would love to hear from Shelby and Jay on this one. I don't know why, but I'm pulling towards that. And then Sarah K.
So with going into K-12, the best advice I can give you from my experience is just talk with your professors, your mentors, team, family. Ultimately, it's your decision where you want to go and like who you want to go work for. But I feel like hearing people's opinions can help shape it can help shape your decision. Some people will look out for you and lead you in a certain direction, and maybe that's where you want to go, or maybe that's not where you want to go. But going into it without help, I guess, or someone else on your team can feel like you might have made the wrong decision, or maybe you missed something. So getting advice from like team members, teachers, stuff like that about, hey, I'm thinking about going off and interpreting here. What do you think about that? And then they'll tell you whatever they tell you. So having like a support system basically is what I'm saying.
Shelby.
Wow. It's been so long since I graduated ITP and went into it brand new. So it's really hard to say. I've also been in the same school district for 7 years. So that's whoever when I went back into it, I had all that knowledge going in. So it's hard to remember, but I will say this. If you give them an inch, they will take a mile. Meaning, your role, why we do what we do. And it's going to be a tough climb if you don't establish that from the beginning, but you have to do it diplomatically, of course, right? I'm a team member, I'm here for all the kids, but this is also my role, and this comes first. I had a great opportunity this year. Like I said, I've been in the same district, so all of our schools are usually really experienced with having an interpreter, but this year I was placed at a school that's never had an interpreter before. And I was scared. I'm not going to lie. I was like, I don't want to go from the ground up. I don't want to, settle this, but I was determined. I was like, you know what? I can start over. I can establish myself as this is what happens. And so I contacted the principal right away. I introduced myself. I reached out to the case managers. I got that ball rolling. And I can't even believe the things that have happened. Even the principal stood up at one point when it was an orientation with the teacher of the deaf, explaining my role again after I had already sent them all, 2 different copies of this is my role. He stood up and said, I just would like to clarify that she's not an aide. She is here for communication access and I was floored. And I took that as kudos to me. I did that,
How's to you?
So, I mean, it's possible. Thank you so much. Scary. But it's possible, but it's just not going into it angrily and not going into it abrasively. It's just, but that takes a lot. Granted, I'm much older. I've been doing this a long time. Not that it gets any easier, but it's just, just saying, I'm a professional, like you guys speak of agency interpreters. An agency interpreter comes in and, oh, wow, they are a professional, but yet I do the same exact role and I'm right. It's a different perspective. And I don't feel that that's fair. So taking that role and saying, yeah, I am a professional just the same. So
Great.
Don't give them an inch, just establish yourself.
Jay, anything to add?
Yes. I want to apply, that was Shelby.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Shelby, thank you for all the work that you've done for yourself and those around you, because I know it is not easy. First of all, my start being an interpreter was a mess. I was literally changing diapers and doing recess and daycare and all this stuff. And so that was when I was completely unaware of what an interpreter even was. Once then I started my ITP at William Woods University, and that's in Missouri. I then at the end of my practicum had Leah for half of my practicum during 2 summers ago. So my point to all this is when I finally went through my ITP, I was realizing I am a professional. I am not just a general staff employee or staff or building employee, whatever I'm trying to say. And so it's hard knowing when to say yes and when to say no, but definitely changing diapers. And I had other teachers telling me like I might have to do things that I don't want to do. And so that was the type of environment I knew was not healthy for me as an interpreter. I was not going to grow just around people that were unaware of what sign language even was. And so I had to put myself into a different city, into a different district where I knew there was a grounded program for deaf education. And boom, my interpreting skills skyrocketed instantly. I mean, I was working around deaf adults, 3 or 4 different deaf adults every single day. I mean, just communicating socially, let alone, hey, we have an hour staff meeting after school and 3 of the deaf adults are going to be there. And they're talking about district levers and rules and guidelines and like safety things that are really important. And all of a sudden I'm here, but I was just like changing diapers 4 months ago. Like, I can't do this all of a sudden, but please breathe. You have support with you. You have deaf people that want you to be there for the community. Hopefully you will have another interpreter close by. And so if you're worried about just starting working in a school, right off the bat, you might hear only the most professional and outstanding interpreters should be working in schools. But also it can be a great place for you to start because you have so many resources around you to support you and grow your skills, to be honest, quite quickly, just speaking for myself. But I've seen it with other interpreters that moved here from other states right out of their ITPs and they're 22 years old, have never worked full-time before, and they're working at the biggest high school in Iowa where I was. And so, and she's doing fantastic. You have people around you that want to support you. And so that's what I think you should start with. Please don't do
My
it.
alma mater, by the way, the deaf program is at my alma mater,
Yes.
in Des Moines.
It's a little gold mine for deaf education there. So yeah, please do not do what I did and just think you can do this on your own. You'll figure it out, because I did that and got myself into some sticky situations with the school district. And I just simply had to leave and kind of start over to find more support. So that's what you need with this job and this community in general. So just keep that in mind.
Layla and Grace, and then we'll do one more question and we'll take a quick break so everybody can kind of like get something to drink and come back. Does that sound good? And finish out? Okay. So Laylee.
I have a couple of points. I actually had to write down so that I wouldn't forget. Starting off, I think it's important to understand that coming into education doesn't have to be a stepping stone. It can be your career. It's not something that you can go and just be like futz around and be like, okay, I'm done. Now I can go interpret for the president. Like, no, this is a position that you can have until you retire. This is a position that is very important to the community, to the children, and also just to education in general. If you feel passionate about learning environments and you feel passionate about advocating and educating, then this is a field for you. Being in an educational setting, you are part of the team always, and you can rely on everybody that's on your team. So even if you're the only interpreter there, Department of Instruction defines us as related services. So reach out to your speech paths, reach out to your OT, your occupational therapist, your physical therapist. That's who we're in the realm with. So if you need help being like, how do I assert myself as somebody who's a professional and not somebody who's just passing through, those people are definitely allies as well in your career. And I think also it's helpful to have a soft heart to understand that generally people don't know anything about disabilities. period, let alone a whole deaf community that is a subculture in America. They have no idea. They've maybe never even met a deaf person. So you coming in, it is our responsibility to educate the adults around as well. So like Shelby was saying, coming in right away and reaching out to all the staff and educating them on what your role is, how to interact with a deaf person. These are all parts, especially with children, you know, as obviously in community with adults, you don't need to do these things, but in an educational setting, it is our responsibility to educate. So I think that's, you know, something to really keep in mind when you go in, is to be steadfast in what you understand your role to be. Language model, tutor, interpreter, language facilitator, and team member. And then you'll be able to command respect with your presence. And I think that that's always something that you have to have confidence in. And of course, always just keep in touch with your mentors. Like keep in touch with, if you're a lone interpreter and you're not working with a bunch of people, keep in touch with all of the community members that you have around you, even if you're, you know, in the middle of podunk, whatever, just reach out constantly for support, because there is a lot of emotion, like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of emotional labor that comes into this, just working in an educational environment, period, because there's just a lot of expectations. And I think that, just to wrap this up, because I feel like I rambled, but I think it is a really wonderful career to be on an educational team.
Grace, did you want to add something?
Yes, I'll make it quick.
Okay.
So I just want to address, I remember when I was in the ITP, I was really nervous about going into K-12 full-time, thinking that I was going to plateau. I know I did say, I mentioned that if I was in one school, I probably would. That's personal to me. I know there is a lot of conversation about people saying that K-12 interpreters don't grow in their position, and I found that to be completely false. I have rarely seen that happen. K-12 interpreters are very professional. They do grow in their skills every single year. I wouldn't worry about your skills plateauing in a K-12 setting at all. I really don't. If you have the mindset of being like worried that your skills are going to plateau, you're already on the right path to making sure that that doesn't happen, because you're going to reach out to people to make sure that it doesn't happen. You're going to put in the work for your students. So K-12 is an amazing career to go through. If you enjoy the school district or school in general and you enjoy the students, that is somewhere that you can stay and you can be an amazing professional who does great things in our field. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll take one more question, then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and finish up. Okay, Samantha, you're up.
I feel like I had a psychic moment there. I was like, that's great. I want to know how you maintain boundaries with your students, and if you've ever had a time where those boundaries got a little blurry, and then how you handle that situation.
Well, look at them all things. Look at them all things. They're all like this. Jay and then Grace.
A really quick answer from me. The minute I'm just going, you know, between classes, and one of them raises their hand, they're like, "Hey, Mr. J, last night when I was playing Fortnite," I literally just look away. I will just look away, because those boundaries where then I'm like, I could ask him, "Oh, like what level are you on?" You know, and then all of a sudden I've stopped interpreting. Like that's messy. Like I'm not here to be your friend in chat. And then maybe I'll see some of the deaf kids in the hallway and they're just swearing up a storm. Look away. I look away and I just keep doing what I'm doing. Elementary, it's different. Yes, you might need to guide them more, but middle school and high school, you are your own individual. I'm here for your communication access. And so I'm keeping that boundary there. I'm not your friend. I like you. We work together, but we keep that clean.
You smell a little, but I like you.
Right.
Grace, Sarah, and LJ.
I had not a situation, but one of my students, I started working with them when they were in 6th grade. They're now in 8th grade. I've been working with them all those years. And I remember in 6th grade, just immediately I got there and they were like, "You are my best friend." And I was like, "Oh no, we're going to have to work on this." Because immediately I was the person that they were next to. They're so friendly and so outgoing. and a wonderful student, but they really did have a misunderstanding of the role of the interpreter. It did make it very easy because they were never embarrassed about me interpreting conversations between their friends. I really was like welcomed into the friend group in an odd way, but it still was like it worked out in that sense, but there was still a boundary of being like, I am still an adult in this situation. You do have to think about what you're saying around me because I am a mandated reporter, and I'm not your best friend. So there were those boundaries that we had to establish and practice. And now coming into 8th grade, they're a lot more independent. They don't call me their best friend anymore. And I think we do have a really good understanding of the role of the interpreter is a lot more like the role of a teacher, not the role of a teacher, but in a child's eyes, more like a role of a teacher and an adult in the room than their best friend, their peer, or whatever. So that was a situation that I had to deal with, and we worked through it just by me setting boundaries slowly throughout the years. And they are often doing their own independent thing now, and it's working out great.
Sarah K.
So boundaries on like a different level. A student that I had, I wish I would have been more like Jay and looked away, but also I would have felt really freaking guilty because my student at that time, I would be like signing and going on about like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And then my student would be like, I want to kill myself tonight. I'm like, lecture, but what? Like, excuse me, like, what did you just say? And that happened all the time. Like my student would drop like, oh, this happened last night. That's a CPS report. This happened 2 days ago. That's a CPS report. But like in those lecture times, that's when my student finally felt safe and wanted to establish this safe adult to tell something to. And I think it's because they knew, oh, my interpreter has a job to do right now. And my interpreter can't go and tell the teacher, get the teacher to be in on this, or go get the principal right now, or go get the counselor right now. And so I constantly was put in this sticky situation of my student just said they want to kill themselves, but then now 30 minutes later, when we finally have the counselor involved, completely denies it. And I never said that. You don't know what you're talking about. But it's like, no, you definitely signed that. Like, you absolutely signed that. I asked for clarification because I stopped doing my job to clarify it. And you for sure said it again. But it's like, it was constantly this weird, there was no boundary because I was the safe adult, but then I wasn't the safe adult because when we included safe adults, it wasn't safe. And so really, like, boundaries are important, yes, but like, will they always be respected? No. Is there a great way to navigate them? Absolutely not. We say in this beautiful unicorn rainbow world, like that's not going to happen. But yeah, you might be going on about the mitochondria and someone drops something really heavy on you because I didn't see it coming.
Yeah. LJ.
Yeah, to piggyback off of what Grace said, like when they know, how, like the school knows how the role of the interpreter works, that makes it a lot easier to kind of set boundaries. But then, especially in the lower grades.
Hello, staff and family.
Hold on one second.
Conferences. Conferences. Announcement.
So embarrassing. No, but it's better when the school and the staff know how the role works. But then the hard part is like when the kids don't know, and it's multiple kids, and they think like you're this cool person in the classroom, and how do you sign this? And they're like, it's one thing I always remember when it's story time and I'm signing and all the kids are trying to copy what I'm doing and they're watching me, not the teacher, trying to set those boundaries for exactly. Just trying to set the boundaries, not just for your student, but for everyone in the classroom. So that's that.
Laylee, did you want to add something?
Just a really quick trick. Especially with older kids, just voice literally everything and they'll stop telling you stuff. Just voice immediately, hey, what'd you do this weekend? And the class will be quiet because they'll be in the middle of lecture and they'll be like, or just totally cut it. So that's it's to start that kind of right away. And that way you won't have any sort of sticky situations like Sarah was kind of saying, because I think we and the panel have all been in that exact scenario before. And so yeah, voicing is your friend at that point. Just hard boundary with the older kids, high school, middle school, high school.
Grace?
Just wanted to add one more quick thing about the boundaries with the students, because a lot of the students in the schools that I work with see me somewhat different because I am interpreting for them. I am interpreting their like personal conversations that aren't school based. And they do get quite comfortable saying things in front of me. So you do have to be ready for knowing a little bit more about your students than maybe the teachers know. Because the students, I've caught a couple things where a student will be like, oh yeah, last night I was talking online. This is a 6th grader. Last night I was talking online with a guy that I met, and he said that he is he's like 30 or something, and they're having a conversation online. And so I had to pull my DJ student aside, and I was like, hey, I know I was interpreting that student, but I'm going to have to say something about this. Are you comfortable? Do you want to come along with me and say something about this? Because this is unsafe for your friend, and I'm concerned for your friend right now. And my student's wonderful, and she was just like, absolutely say something. I was concerned about it too. You're not always going to have a student that's like, absolutely say something. I'm lucky enough to have one, but even last week, I was interpreting a conversation where my student was like, hey, what's going on with your arms? And the student was just like, oh, nothing. It's why I always wear sweatshirts. I'll tell you later. I was like, okay, we're going to have to talk to people about this. You are very much involved in student conversations, and you're going to have to be ready to deal with situations that maybe teachers overlook and don't see because they're not involved in those intimate personal conversations that the students have.
And you also, I mean, I think it's important too to know they're kids too. They need to be able to swear with their friends and not get in trouble. They need to be able to walk hand in hand and slap their girlfriend's butt without somebody going, hey, that's sexual harassment, you're not supposed to do that. Like when do you is it a safety issue versus dude, they're being a kid? Like I did that, I kissed behind the locker, I like shoved my boyfriend in, locked it, like I did all that. I did all that, okay? So yeah, that's kind of a hard boundary sometimes. Julie, and then I have one question about boundaries, and we'll take a break, just let the panel ponder the question, because we've talked really a lot about it at the beginning of class, when we first started this semester, so I want to kind of get your feel for it. But Julie, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I think that students can also tend to view you as a friend, because I do joke around with my students like before class starts and stuff like that, and I ask them, what did you do this weekend, or all that stuff, just to have that connection with them, and it opens them up and it gets them like ready for the day to like have somebody take interest in them, especially if there's not a lot of students in that class who know sign. So but I also feel like they can start treating you like a friend, where like just today I had a student who was like, that time in math class when I said my stomach hurt and I went to the bathroom for 25 minutes, I lied. I was just playing in there. I was just on my phone. And I was like, I had to be obviously a very like teacher figure and be like, okay, like, but if teachers find out that you're abusing their pass, like they're not going to give you a pass in the future to use, because you're tricking them. You're lying to them by, you're taking advantage of them. But also at the same time, like other interpreters at this school, when students have said something that's like, they're acting a little bit shady, but so are the hearing kids, like, okay, you needed a break and you went into the bathroom and you were like, oh, my stomach hurt, and then you didn't come back to class at all until the bell rang. Like that happens, but you don't need to tell the interpreter about it. It's almost like one of those things, like a wink wink nod nod, like just don't tell your interpreter about that, because hearing kids aren't telling their teacher about my stomach hurts, and but actually, last week, like I was just kidding, like I was just getting out of class hearing kids don't tell their teachers that because teachers would obviously react like, that's not cool. So like, even though you don't want kids to do those kind of behaviors, you have to kind of say like, if you're gonna do something like that, it's not appropriate to tell me. Obviously, you don't want them to do that. But then today, like my student was like, okay, I will never do it again. And I'm like, I'm watching, eyes on you.
Right. Yeah.
So just
kind of what
yeah.
Lainey said about the language deprivation and just them not being able to pick up that incidental stuff, like, oh, hearing kids don't tell their teacher that they're lying. Well, how would they know that if it's not interpreted? They have no clue what the hearing kids are saying to the teacher, right? So yeah, it's like giving that little like, don't tell me. No, I get it, but yeah, you do that little like education piece. Okay, so the one question about boundaries, we'll take a break and come back at like 10 after, but phone numbers of students. Do you think it's appropriate for interpreters to have phone numbers of their students in their phones as you like the reaction? Ponder that a little bit. Come back at 10 after and we'll keep going. Cool?
No, what is there to ponder? What do you mean ponder?
I want to ponder it. I know, you know what I believe, but hey, 10 after.
I just want to say I'm sorry I have to leave you guys. Grab contact information if you need it, but have a great night.
Thanks.
Is there contact in the chat?
Yes, I'll give you all their contact information. I'll make sure it's okay with them and then.
Hey, Grace.
Hey, Sarah. Oh my gosh. The animals.
Yeah, Grace, you're looking like a mad scientist or evil boss or something in your armchair, and
That is what I was thinking. When I picked the spot, I was like, I either look like an old like English professor or a mad scientist. And I thought about there's a light right here, and I was like, should I just have like this dark corner and like this light over me?
perfect. Yes, that is very accurate.
Fiona just can't handle her life because my mom is usually with her, and my mom is currently on a plane to Texas right now. So me shutting the door was like the worst thing I could have done to her, and she's been freaking out. And now she has to touch me or she's gonna keep shaking. And she already takes 3 Prozac a day.
Oh my gosh. This cat's just orange. He likes to be touched. There's no other way.
Gotta love an anxious dog, though. It's like they're purring, they're shaking. It's great.
It's like I saw a post on Facebook. It was like a meme, and it was like, the problem with emotional support animals is when they're the ones that need the emotional support.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened.
She's so cute though.
She is really floppy. Ugh.
This is not my cat, by the way. I'm at a friend's house.
You can just tell like their independence level. My oldest one is in the living room and doesn't care what I'm doing. My middle one is on the floor on my feet. And then my youngest has to be in my lap freaking out. They're children.
That's straight birth order theory, but for your dogs.
It's legit too. It's really messed up, but it's legit.
My friend's dog was going to come for a visit, but she didn't want to cross the wire on the floor. She looked at it and she's like, that's not normally there. I'm going to go back to my human. I can't do it.
So Fiona finally got off my lap, and now she's sitting in the living room crying to the older one, like, why don't you care?
You need to care.
Hi, Leo. Grace, you're the co-host. You're in charge.
Trying to contact me. So did you see she asked you to jump out and jump back in because some reason you're like the co-host? So they like don't have any. Oh wait, just kidding, just kidding. Oh, making you the co-host.
She's making Grace co-host so she can go out because her audio is not working.
How many interpreters does it take to?
Everybody's
You're unreliable.
Answer
Well,
a whole panel.
talking about her dogs over here. All the important things. I don't know if this is important, but there's a box that says original sound for musicians is on. Also, now I clicked it and it turned it off. Noise suppression is enabled.
Ooh, I'm a co-host.
Ooh, phenomenal cosmic power.